Um, anyway, turn, if you would, to Hebrews chapter 12. We're going to do verses 1 through 16. Now, Zach, I have to admit, on that last song, I don't understand the timing. It's 3-2. We did one in 6-4, the one before that, I think. I can do that one. But when then they take, instead of a dotted half note, they make it a whole note. Then because I'm counting out of waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 1.5 for the rest. We need help there.
Sounded pretty slow to me.
Well, it's, I don't know, the timing is off. Not on their end, at my end, you know. But I played it for them before service and said, well, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, which wasn't the right way, but we got through it. Ever feel as though you need help? Always?
All the time.
All the time. Help getting out of bed. What do you need help in?
Seeing the future.
Pardon?
Seeing the future.
Well, don't worry about that.
It's kind of difficult.
You can see the future in the Bible. And you need help. Some people need help getting dressed. Some people need help coordinating their clothes. Huh? Just to get through life. Do you think you have a challenge as being a Christian?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really? Well, we have Jesus days out by the yard. I'm watering out there, and I have people waving at me, honking at me while I'm watering. I don't know if these people even know me. I got relatives down the street. I think they honk once in a while. If I'm out there watering, I'm sitting in a chair watering. And then one guy said, he was jogging by, he said, I like your sign. We just got a text this morning on our billboard, somebody from Cleveland Baptist. And I think this fellow was at one time supposed to run the Institute. And I don't know if they never saw it over there before. Maybe it was the first time they ever saw it. But they sent a text over to Sonny's phone saying how they appreciated the sign, the billboard over on the west side. So I assume it's the same three that's going on over here. We'll probably enhance that this week. And anybody feel as though they're persecuted as a Christian? Not yet.
Not yet.
For you have not resisted unto
Blood.
Pardon?
Death.
No?
Blood.
Blood. I mean, no one beat you up yet. You haven't resisted unto blood yet. And Paul writes that. But tonight, I thought we would do helps for the Christian, things that will help us. And for all I know, it's going to come down to this. I don't even know what started the Korean War. What started the Vietnamese War? That was going on before we were there.
Greed.
Pardon? The communists. There was the North, there was the South. There was, and who was, before we were there, before the Americans were there, who was running that? No? The French. I think it's a French colony. Or French...
It was a French colony.
It's a French colony. So the French were in there. And then, now how it's split, I don't know. I don't know the history of that. But as far as I know, the premier, I don't know what they call the ruler there. The premier, what do they call the ruler?
Can I say something?
No, not really.
Because I know pretty good history on that part of the town.
Okay. Well, did you go there? Or you went to Germany?
No, during World War, I studied this. During World War II, the French were laying low, and they was out in France until the end of the war. And so the Allies came over to Vietnam and talked to Ho Chi Minh. It was not his given name. Oh, they talked to him, his father was the ambassador to France from Vietnam, and they said, would you please spy on the Japs for us, and whatever you want you can have by the end of the war. All they wanted was us to support them in their independence from France, and we turned our back on them, and so they got mad.
Yeah, it's political.
We could have had, the whole thing could have been avoided. We could have had an ally with Vietnam and keep China in check, but no.
It's because of the war, and your friends are the ones you're allied with. You got to kick the Japs out. The Japs were in China. They befriend this and so on. Yeah, I think you're right there.
Yeah.
And then, but later on, when I was as a kid looking at that, I thought that I heard that the premier, the one who's ruling in North Vietnam, and the one that rules in South Vietnam, they're related. I think they're all family members. So it's like an uncle and a nephew.
And they assassinated President Diem of South Vietnam about a week or two before they killed Kennedy.
Well,
just to clean the decks.
But I think it's a family affair. And so you have families against one another there. Now, I don't know if that's true, so don't quote me on it, but things like that happen. Like now, the Korean War, again, it's communists and the politics of it. I'm not sure about how that got started, how it's separated. Are these people, again, related, the North and the South, of these regimes? But I would hear these stories, after I got saved, I would hear these stories about the communists coming in, North Korea, coming into South Korea, and they would be attacking churches and attacking Christians. They dug a pit, one story I heard, they dig a pit, they put this family in it, I think it's a preacher, in the North, puts this family, husband and wife, kids in there, and they say either you denounce Christ or you're dead. Now what would you do?
Praise the Lord.
Easier said than done, Rich.
God giveth the grace in the time of need.
That's true. Well, what did the father do? This is his wife and kids. Guess, what did he do? He didn't. He began to. All right? Then what did the mother do? She said, nah, we're going to have breakfast in heaven.
Amen.
So what'd they do? And they buried him. That hasn't happened yet here. At least lately, it hasn't happened. But it's coming. It could be coming. And there, I've heard lots and lots of stories of what went on in Korea between the North, the godless northern communists, and those that were in South Korea. So these are, we think about the chastening. When we think of Hebrews 12, we think of the chastening hand of the Lord. We can think of some negative things here. But in the end, if we stick with this topic, I think we can see and interpret Hebrews chapter 12, 1 through 16, and this will be a help to us. So helps for the Christian. It begins in verse 1 with looking at, we have all P words here tonight, the past. We look at the past. We look at what happened in Vietnam. We look at what happened in Korea. I told that story is to bring, now you may say, oh, Korea's so long ago. Come on, compared to the rest of history, it's not that long ago. It's the beginning of the 1950s. I don't even know when it started, 1952, something like that. It was over in a couple of years, I think. We lost quite a few men there, and so on. And this, taking place right after the big war, Wherefore, seeing we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. Now, it's pointing back, when it gives that statement, we are compassed about, surrounded with this cloud of witnesses. Those that went before us witnessing in their life, what had happened to them as a Christian. It's a recap. It's chapter 12, and that first part of verse 1 is pointing back to chapter 11. And chapter 11, what do we call that chapter? Mrs. Tucker, I saw your lips moving. The chapter of faith. Those that went on before us and how they exercised and performed their faith in what had happened. I mean, we have Abel, what happened with Abel and Enoch and Noah, what took place with Noah and Abraham, as I'm just kind of skimming through here, Abraham and Sarah, and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. As I go through the chapter of faith, Moses, and all of these things that had taken place before us, the harlot Rahab, Gideon, David, Samson and David. It goes on, who through faith subdued kingdoms, verse 33 of chapter 11, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. There's a lot of talk lately on the TV about aliens. I think even our government is kind of given into that and saying that they exist. Women received their dead, raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance. So we look at the past and say, what could help us? If we look at the past, we say, these people made it. They made it. They fought a good fight. They have kept the faith. And so we look at the past, and we also then look at, in verse 1, we also look, when we look at the past, we look at the price they paid. They paid a pretty steep price. Now, I've heard of these Koreans, North Koreans, these communists, going into a church, threatening everybody must deny Christ, otherwise they're going to kill you. I heard of a story. One girl did not. They took her out. So the assumption is they were going to kill her, and they fired the gun, and everybody assumes that they killed her. They bring her back in. They said, if you would deny that just that easily, Christianity's not worth much. They spared her. They didn't kill her. They just made everybody think they killed her. But a lot of these people paid a high price. They paid a high price with their own lives. Their own lives. Now listen, I haven't had my house egged or my car, or it says Jesus saves on the hot rod. We don't get pushback from any of that. You think that black lives? By the way, you pronounce lives and lives the same way. Aren't they spelled the same? Well, why isn't it black lives? That if you bring that up, Christ in this day and age right now, and in the atmosphere, or what would you call it, the situation, the culture that we are in right now, are black people going to resist you or be sympathetic and accept you if you bring up Jesus?
Sympathetic.
I believe they're going to be sympathetic.
People who are right-minded.
They are those that are in their right mind. They're still going to church. They're still getting preached to. Not all these churches are radical. And they're hearing the message. And I've been in line with these people. Some will say amen. And you're not going to get pushback. So don't think that you can't open your mouth. I mean, you can do that. I mean, just stand in a line with a lot of black people, and you're not going to get pushback. You say Jesus saves me, and there's going to be a lot of people in agreement with you. that they're not going to be against you. These people, though, back here, they paid the price with their own lives. They had trial, verse 36, cruel mockings, scourgings. Yea, moreover, the bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. I mean, it's pretty bad. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented. Imagine, you and I haven't even come close to that. Nothing even close to that. So the past, if we want to help, something that will help us get through our lifetime, and some of us are closer to the end than others. I did something that I really haven't done for years. We've been doing this for 25 years. I would go home, even before that, even when we were running the bus, but before that, or just when we were doing the church 20 years ago, 25 years ago, after lunch on a Sunday, what would I do? Man, I went to bed and I would be crashed. Preaching a Sunday sermon is equivalent to what? This is what we learn. It's equivalent to preaching one sermon on a Sunday morning is equivalent to what?
Running a mile.
No, it's equivalent to working hard labor for an 8-hour day. That's what they claim. Now, this morning I put a big effort into it. Today I decided I'm going upstairs. I went to bed. And I can see some of you needed to do the same. All right. But there is the price that these people paid. And some of us, like I said, are closer to the end than others. Right? The price. It says, and so now these are helps. Now remember the topic. The helps for the Christian. We look in the past and we see others have made this great cloud of witnesses that went on before us. And the price that they paid, these should be all encouragement and helps to help us along the way, saying, they made it, I can make it too. If you're on the Boston Marathon, there is a hill there that they run on the Boston Marathon. Anybody know what they call it? I had a gym teacher that would run that the Boston Marathon every year. He would go to Boston, run that. I think it's 28 miles.
26.2.
Pardon?
26.2.
Oh, 26.2. So it's not 28 miles. It seems like 28 miles. There are people that cheat. They start in late. They get help along the way. There's cheaters on that. I think there's a hill near the end. I think it's called Heartbreak Hill.
Yeah.
Is it called Heartbreak Hill?
I don't know, but it sounds great for a hill like that.
Yeah. I think it's Heartbreak Hill. Now there's Archer over here. That's a long hill. And he would run it. It's Mr. Trojan. He would run that. I'm sure he's long since dead. I was a kid when I was in his gym class. He would run that hill up Archer Road, and he would do that so he could try to prepare himself for Heartbreak Hill in the Boston Marathon. Oh, I'll give you one more chance.
In Fort Knox, they got 3 hills.
Oh, they do?
Agony, misery, and heartbreak.
Oh, okay, then they name them. Yeah, with a full pack.
Yeah.
Blop it along, The past, the price, and here another help for you and I to get through this. It says, lay aside verse 1, every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us. So there is the purging. If you want to run in this race and you want to have help in this race, there's something that is weighing you down in becoming an efficient, effective, I'm going to finish this race Christianity. Something is weighing you down. Name some sins, some obvious ones: gambling, drinking, smoking, laziness. That's a sin. Being overweight, that's a sin. Anything that would restrict you from finishing this race needs to be purged out of your life. Something that weighs you down. It keeps you, restricts you from opening the look. I remember I think it's Sam Gipp would say this, he would do Mother May I. Mother May I. I think Mother May I, they say, how many steps can I take? And then Mother says, what does Mother say? 3, but I think they say 3 giant steps, 3 medium-sized steps. Do they say 3 baby steps, 5 baby steps? He said, listen, if you cannot take giant steps, he says, like Mother May I, and all you can do is take baby steps. Well, just take baby steps. Whatever it is, but always move forward, moving forward. Take, even if it is baby steps. So we have to get rid of the sin that doth so easily beset us, that will help us along the way, that helps for the Christian. And let us run, it says, another P word here in verse 1, with patience, the race that is set before us. So our fourth point, and it's in verse 1, the pass, the price, the purging, and the patience. This race is not a sprint. This is a marathon. What kind of a race would you rather run? A marathon or a sprint? The sprint's over quickly. Certain kinds of people, certain builds. You could tell the difference between a marathon runner and a sprint runner. Their build is different. It's kind of like the difference between a gymnast, somebody who exercises and performs gymnastics, and somebody that performs basketball. What's the build of a basketball player? They're tall. What's the build of a gymnast? Petite, smaller, and I'm specifically thinking of men, but especially women. What's the difference between a barrel running with a horse, and a man? A man is got big wide shoulders and a woman doesn't. She stays in the saddle better. See, certain physiques you can perform better. So this is a marathon. And as a general rule, those that perform in a marathon, their physical build is different. And a marathon, I mean, you got to have this stamina to just keep going, keep on going, and not quitting. So there is the patience. In your patience, possess ye your souls. In your patience, possess ye your souls. That is found in what gospel? You got a 25% chance of guessing it. Luke. It's in Luke. I think it's Luke 19 something. In your patience, possess ye your souls. Patiently plodding along. Never giving up. I mean, day after day. After when this sermon is over, you're going to go home. You might have a pizza. Keep you up all night. Or you might just go to bed early, but tomorrow starts another day, right? And you start and you get going again. The patience. You just keep plodding along. We are to be then, in verses 2, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. All right, he endured the cross. What is that called? It appears, I believe it's only one time in the Bible, when he endured the cross, when he did that. Yes, ma'am, you, right. It is the passion of Christ, the passion. So we, as a help for the Christian, we have to look at the author who authored our faith, who finished our faith, who went on before us, who did this. Not only the past of these Christians, but the captain of our salvation and the passion that he went through, the suffering that he went through. We are to, when there's nothing else to look at, look for him. When we say nothing else to look for, that's the one we should be looking for, right? Looking for him. setting our goal at him, that Jesus Christ died for us. And to quit on him would be saying you died in vain, right? He did not die in vain. He died for you and for me. The passion that we are to go on looking for that. Verses 3 and verse 4. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. We can get weary and faint in our minds. Ye have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. So we look at the past, we consider the price they paid, and the purging and the patience, and we look at the passion of Christ, and it's all for considering him, and it is the purpose in doing that, is so that we would not be weary and faint. And it begins, if you're weary and faint, usually it begins where? As it says in the verse. I'm worn out, man. And where do we faint? We're wearied and we faint where? In our minds. All right? We faint and we are weary in our mind. It's kind of like a 20-mile, these guys that, I had GIs working for me. They would go away to boot camp. I had a couple guys in the armored division, and they were, I don't know where they were stationed. I forget. I don't know if it was the Marines or it could have been Fort Knox, but they were in the armored division, and they're on these marches. And two guys specifically that I had, and their builds were different. One was a big guy, and not a giant of a man, but he wasn't a small man. The other guy was a little guy. And he said, there were guys, because it's filled with all different kinds of fellas in the armed services. He said there's certain people that would mess up. They want to control everything in your life, even your eating. You go to the chow line, you get your chow, you get in the cafeteria, whatever they call it, the mess hall. The mess hall. And by the way, is that an archaic word? How many messes did Benjamin get? Anybody know how many he got?
Double?
No, I think it's 5 messes. 5. So 5 times as much. I don't think it's double. I think it's 5 messes.
More than normal.
But when you say messes, well, what does that mean? Well, it's the Army, you go to the mess hall. So you go to the mess hall. And the sergeant, they wanted to get full control of you. And so you got your fork in your hand. They say down, up, down, up, down, up. And they give you time to eat it. Down. They tell, this is robots. They want to get you to obey. Down. What person messes up? They go down, the food is on there, it falls off. You can't go back for it. Even if the fork is empty, it goes up. I don't know if you experienced that. This is what they would tell me. It go up to, even if it's empty, it goes up to the mouth. All right, then you can't put it down until they tell you down again. Then up, down, up. So what kind of a guy messes up? He said, it's always a certain kind of a guy. Huh? One that's overweight. He said the heavy guys always messed up. They would lunge back for the food. The moment you did that, what had happened? The moment you messed up. No, you were done eating, and now you have to run laps. Since you can't get with the program, you're done eating, you're finished, buddy, and you're going to have to lumber along, and you start running laps. So they got to get control of these guys. And so the purpose of all this suffering, that consider him, be weary and faint in your mind. Oh, wearied and faint in your mind. They're on these marches. And he says the same guys that are a little overweight, and they do knock the pounds off. It's like 6 weeks of this basic training. And you find out underneath all that, there is a sculptured form under there that can get in shape because they're lumbering along. And they're lumbering along, and then all of a sudden, a guy goes, oh, like this. You don't want to do that. because you already made up your mind, I've had it, I'm going to hit the ground, is that they catch themselves. If you catch yourself before you hit the ground, you better, this drill sergeant's going to take you aside and really beat on you. They beat on you, and now you think you were running out. Now you're really going to be running. The only time they don't do that is when you're lumbering along and you're so exhausted that you go down like, I can't think of the heavyweight. I've told you the story, the heavyweight, when he it wasn't Buster Douglas, he got hit. When he hit the mat, man, it was full force, boom, is when he got knocked out. He said when they hit full force, boom. I don't think the Army's that way today. I think they have these little sissy tags.
Well, if you can't survive a drill instructor, you're not going to survive a war.
Folks, there's no rules in war. If you know, there's rules of engagement that we have, and I think they started to stop doing that when the lead is actually flying. Not today when the lead is flying, but if you're in Stalingrad, Leningrad, any of those places, there are no rules, man. It's kill or be killed, especially if you're lost. But there's a purpose for all that has gone on before this. This purpose, considering him, so that we will not be wearied, that we will not faint in our minds. The purpose of this. Verses 5 and 6. These are verses that we're very familiar with. And ye have not forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. So when a child, now I know that 2 weeks ago, I did not take care of what, I didn't even cross my mind, knowing that I had inexperienced little grandchildren here with their loving cousins watching, and that wasn't going to go well, and it didn't go well. And so I prepped it today before we had service. Next week, what I'll do is, if they're here, I'll prep that before we start. That way they know that this is supposed to be behaved. There's no reason for a kid not to sit for a half hour. They can watch Bugs Bunny for an hour. They can listen to me for a half hour. Right? They can make that. They can watch Bozo the Clown for an hour. They can listen to me for a half hour. So when we get off the beaten track, there's the despise not the chastening of the Lord. When we get off the beaten track, it's like a switch. Is you switch their legs of the children, you get them back on track, right, when they're wandering around and they're doing things that you and I do, things that we should not be doing. The Lord then chastens us and gets us back. This is the way, walk ye in it, right? When you want to venture to the left or the right, is we shouldn't be doing that, is this is the way, walk ye in it. So he gives us little spankings to keep us in line. These are helps. This helps a child. It's kind of like I give this example, I've done this, and I probably have heard this in preaching, is if you can't listen as a child, if you haven't been taught to listen as a child, once you hit 18, you could say, well, it's 21. Well, no, in this country today, it's 18, it's probably less than that. When the cop says, halt or I'll shoot, the idea is listening is halt or I'll shoot, because that cop's going to shoot. We've got to obey, learning to obey when we need to. So there is pain in that, in learning how to be disciplined and obedient, the pain. Verses 7 and 8, if ye endure chastening, God dealeth with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are ye bastards and not sons. So when you and I undergo this pain and this suffering in our life, to get us back on track, verses 7 and 8, it is the proof that we belong to him, because you don't discipline the neighbor's children. You don't discipline the children down the street. You discipline those that you're related to. right? Those sons and daughters that belong to you, you discipline them. So it gives the proof of it, that you belong to them. All right? So we would have kids in our house that it was against the law for us to touch. You couldn't do that. We would be told up front, if you touch them, we're coming to get you. Right? That's what they would tell us. Those kids that lived with us needed a licking. And it would have saved a lot of problems down the road and maybe saved jail time too. What if we could have just given them the licking they needed right from the get-go? And then some could argue the fact that, well, it was already too far gone, which I'm not one to give up. I'm not one to give up.
It's a bad attitude.
The BA, we always call that the BA, the bad attitude. The proof. Verses 9 through 11. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh, which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live? So we did it in the flesh, then it also, as a saved person, it's done in the spirit. For they verily for a few days chasten us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit. So our ninth one is the profit. This is for our benefit, our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. So it produces a profit in a person's life when they learn to run this straight and narrow path, and God has chastened you and I to stay on that straight and narrow path. And those that do not, the Bible calls it as a ship, they become shipwrecked, like dashed upon the shore, dashed upon the rocks, and tossed to and fro until the ship breaks apart and they become shipwrecked. And so all this is done for our profit, verses 12 and 13. Wherefore, lift up the hands which hang down and the feeble knees, and make straight paths, plural, for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, and let it rather be healed. And so it is that the help for the Christian is, after this is profited us, it is that we make straight paths for our feet, paths. Now, and it's not a straight path, it's straight paths. I can jump to the conclusion is that you and I are all headed for heaven, but we all have different things for us, for you and I to do. We aren't called to the same thing, so we have different paths that we go on. And he has given this and done this for our profit, that we get on the path that he has assigned specifically for you. The paths that we are to be on. So we get our hands hang down, we have feeble knees, and he wants to make a straight path for our feet so that we do not turn out of the way. That we don't turn out of the way and get caught up in things that we shouldn't be doing, the paths. Verse 14, follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. And so with that, it should bring peace to you and I. We are to follow peace with all men. You know, when Jeremiah was going through his trials and tribulations, who was giving him a hard time?
Jezebel.
The lost people or the saved people? It was the saved people giving him a hard time. Putting him in the mire, imprisoning him, giving Jeremiah a hard time. The religious folk were doing that. We are to make peace with all men. We make peace with the lost world. It says with all men. With the lost world. I mean, we don't have to... There's enough agitators out there. Right? They're professional agitators. There are people that are just showing up just for sightseeing. Let's see what a good riot looks like. Right? Hey, you have nothing to do? I'm selling tickets. Front row seats here. $10 a ticket. And come and get on the bus and you can see the riots in Portland. The riots in Seattle. People are going down there just to have the fun of watching this, be a sightseer. But we are to make peace with all men. I think if you go down and you are confronted with this, it says we're not to appease, we're not to compromise, but if I think within reason, we'll make peace with them. God will protect us. Not to purposely look for trouble, but not to appease people in their nonsense, but to make peace with them. And God is the God of peace, and He wants peace in your life. And yours in my life, peace. And last of all tonight, verses 15 and 16. Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God. There could be a failure. Lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. Lest there be any fornication or profane person, as Esau was, who for one morsel of bread sold his birthright. The idea here is, if you don't want to get with the program, there is our last P word, the peril. The peril that awaits those, like I said, they make shipwreck of their life. They make shipwreck of their life. So he always presents that, listen, you could be permanently damaged from this, as Esau was, and sold out for a piece of bread. For a piece of bread. And gave it all up. So there is a great peril involved. Now, so there is, if we stick with it, is there going to be a great reward for us if we stick with it? See, people want their reward now. Let me ask you this. If I could give you a dime, I saw this, who's the guy that wears the silent films? He's a comedian, he wears the black glasses. Floyd, what's his name? Harold Floyd. I'm pretty sure he makes a purchase, and he puts down a dime. What kind of a dime is it?
Silver.
Well, we know that, but what kind? Say it. It's American. Mercury, it is not a mercury dime. Pardon? Oh, that's a nickel. A dime. It's not a mercury dime.
Previous to mercury.
What's before the mercury dime? Nobody knows? It's not the shield. That's before that. That's Civil War. It's a barber dime, the barber head. Then there was the mercury dime. Then it's the Eisenhower dime. Is it? Oh, Roosevelt. What am I thinking? Roosevelt. Is it still Roosevelt?
Yeah.
If you could take a dime, one dime, just one, and I was to tell you 1 year from now, if you just hold on to that dime, I'll give you 100 dimes. Just hold that dime. Not an antique dime, just a regular dime. 100 times that. How much is that? Say it out loud. If I give you a dime, and I say to you, you hold that for 1 year, and it'll be $100. Or no, $10. $10. Now, if you had 10,000 of those dimes, 10,000 dimes, how much would that be? 10,000 dimes. 10,000 dimes, and you multiply it by 100. 100,000. If it's 100,000 dimes, then dimes, what would it be? Be $1 million. $1 million. Can I? Let's say And you say, you know, it's kind of like this. Anytime I did that buying and selling business I had, I would buy a machine. I bought a machine for $90, an attachment. I sold it for $2,300. Is that a pretty good investment? Did I know I was going to do that, sell it for $2,300? I had no idea. And all my kids says, well, can we get in on that? Well, the deal's over. They would always do it after the deal. The deal's over. You can't get involved in it now. You had to get involved in it before I did. I bought a machine for $70. I sold it, or maybe it was $90 or $100. I sold it for $700. Would you like to get in on a deal like that? Who wouldn't want to get in on a deal like that? What kind of a person is that don't want to get in on a deal like that? What do you call that kind of a person? Starts with an F. A fool. If you had 100,000 dimes, for real, 100,000 of them, dimes.
In a big wheelbarrow.
And in 1 year, you would have $1 million. But you can't be guaranteed that because you can't see the future. But if you could see the future and you saw that and you could, what would you be considered? You already said it once. Pardon? A fool. You'd be a fool for not doing that. It's worthless. But if you had 100,000 dimes, which is $10,000, in 1 year from now, it'll be worth $1 million. You'd be a fool not to participate. You say, well, I don't see the future. Here's the problem. With this book, we do see the future. We do see the future. These are, I don't know, there's a term called future stocks. I don't know what that means. But this is the future. And we can see the future. And these helps for a Christian, and that those that don't get on board will lose their rewards. There's peril out there. You'll lose your rewards. You won't get a reward. You won't get a crown. And so what would you be considered then? Starts with an F. You'd be a fool. You'd be a fool not to get on board. Because with this program, you can see down the road.
Yeah.
You can see down the road. If you buy stocks and bonds, can you see down the road? You can't, but there are people who can make money at that.
You got.
But you can't see, you do it in faith. With this, folks, we can see the future. This is coming our way. Shake hands before leaving.